Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares with the news from the global economy. Coming up, as the West and Iran find common ground, tourists return, and solar ambitions in Tunisia are a boon both locally as well as across the Mediterranean. First, the headlines. Japanese stocks jumped to a 7-year peak on Tuesday, boosted by additional stimulus and a reallocation of funds to domestic stocks. Following the Bank of Japan's surprise move to ease policy further on Friday, the Nikkei index surged 4.8%. On Tuesday, investors pushed the Nikkei benchmark an additional 3.5% to its highest level since October 2007. Market players also took heart from the government pension investment fund's decision to raise domestic stock holdings to 25% from the current 12%.
When the stock market rises, there will be an acid effect which would link to consumption and lead to positive economic growth.
Hyundai and Kia agreed to pay $100 million to settle a U.S. government investigation into overstated fuel efficiency claims. The U.S. Department of Justice said it marked the largest civil penalty ever secured under the 4-decade-old Clean Air Act. In addition to paying the fine, the South Korean car makers had to reduce their fuel ratings by up to 2 miles per gallon for nearly 1.2 million vehicles. The companies also had to forfeit greenhouse gas credits they had wrongly claimed that could be valued at hundreds of millions of dollars.
This will send a strong message that cheating is not profitable and that any company that violates the law will be held to account.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced a 15% increase in the minimum wage to protect Venezuelans from inflation. Maduro said the cumulative raise for 2014, following a 30% hike in May and 10% in January, would compensate for inflation. Venezuela's annualized inflation rate reached 63.4% in August, with consumer prices rising by 3.9% that month. Skyrocketing consumer prices and shortages of nearly a third of basic goods have pushed Maduro's approval rating down to 37%. Critics say Venezuela's endemic inflation problem is evidence of the failure of 15 years of socialist economics under Maduro and his predecessor Hugo Chavez.
I've also ordered a raise of all wages for public administration jobs, which will have immediate effect for all workers who work for the public administration.
The Justice Department is conducting a criminal investigation of J.P. Morgan Chase's foreign exchange-related matters. J.P. Morgan, the largest U.S. bank by assets, said the investigations focus on its foreign exchange trading activities and controls related to those activities. The bank said it could lose as much as $5.9 billion related to litigation in excess of its legal reserves, up $1.3 billion from a previously reported figure. J.P. Morgan has already paid billions of dollars in penalties to remedy regulatory concerns ranging from trading losses to mortgage abuses ahead of the financial crisis. Israel's social justice movement gained a powerful ally on Monday as President Reuven Rivlin said legislation aimed at cracking down on cartels and monopolies is insufficient. It's clear that the financial services, energy, food, and housing sectors are in need of bold but responsible reform, Rivlin told a conference on economy and society in Haifa. Rivlin added that bold reform had to go beyond the business concentration law and the food law approved by the Knesset. He stressed his concern that earlier reforms might entrench the existing situation more rather than correcting it. Decades of sanctions have led the Iranian government to redirect funds away from its tourism sector. But as the West and Iran have recently found common ground on geopolitical issues, the thaw in relations is once again drawing tourists to the ruins of what was once the Persian Empire. Here's the story.
Here under the gaze of these large stone bulls, delegates from across the world would have once found themselves at the gates of the Persian Empire. Today, tourists are returning to Persepolis, its former capital, after years of neglect under President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Many of them are finding a warm welcome.
I think it's one of the country which have two sides. One side which making media, mass media, and this side, the true side, when you came here and you are travel around and everyone want to help you and everyone smile for you. So that's great.
Heavy sanctions levied over the last decade by Europe and the U.S. crippled Iran's economy, cutting its revenues from oil. Broken diplomatic relations and limited resources left many sites like this empty.
There have been much fewer tourists in the past few years, and the few that came weren't even buying anything.
But with nuclear negotiations renewed and sanctions lifted, the government is investing in tourism again in an effort to make it a profitable sector. Tehran inaugurated a luxury passenger train this past month, whose maiden voyage was filled with Western tourists.
I really think the people are very friendly. You get the wrong impression from the newspapers. The newspapers give the wrong side.
Official figures show that at the end of March, tourism was up 35%, bringing in $6 billion since 2013. With 17 UNESCO-listed World Heritage Sites, Iran wants to draw 20 million visitors within a decade.
For tourists, we have managed to resolve the visa issues. Now, except for 1 or 2 countries, most of them can get their visas at the airport. This is facilitated by the government, and we feel good that the government is supporting us and is behind us.
Success still depends heavily on official foreign relations and the outcome of ongoing nuclear talks. But for now, improved dialogue with the West is encouraging new visitors to come knocking at the door of this ancient empire.
And we take a deeper look now at the economic factors underlying the flourishing of Iran's tourism industry in Financial Bazaar with i24 News correspondent Ayman Siksak. Ayman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, just a few months ago, maybe last year, Iran was still viewed as being part of this evil axis, so to speak. How did it become a tourist attraction?
Well, luckily for Iran, it has many holy sites in the country. So over 5 million people visited Iran last year. Over half of them came as cultural tourists to visit the holy sites there. And this is a constant attraction. This is not something that's going to change. It's likely to increase over time.
These are mainly people from the Middle East, or?
Yes, the Middle East and neighboring Asian countries. Mm-hmm. And so Iran actually raked in over $6 billion last year from tourism alone, mainly cultural tourism.
Right.
And now ranks 8th in the world in cultural tourism. So it's doing pretty well despite the axis of evil image.
Is this also, because of a boost of Western tourists going into Iran, or?
Well, Iran is certainly trying. They're now trying to make further steps to attract European visitors to Iran. Right. And as you can imagine, not many Europeans are visiting Iran these days for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a line of a train going from Hungary, from Budapest, that will eventually lead to Tehran. It's still not operational, but it's likely to be a very luxury type of extremely nice 5-star line, which Iran is working on to attract more European tourists and boost its image as a global attraction to people all over the world.
It should certainly be interesting to see that. And so would we see the tourism industry grow to the extent that, say, it could take over the energy industry, which has been not doing so well?
Well, Iran is certainly trying. There's over 1,000 hotels right now in Iran. Over 100 of them are 5-star hotels. They're expecting this number to grow threefold by 2025. And the number we mentioned earlier, 5 million visitors, by 2025, they wanted to increase to 20 million. So Iran will certainly do everything in order to make that happen. And this is all part of what they call the economy of resistance.
Right.
So following the sanctions on oil and trade with Iran, they're trying to develop other spheres in the economy so as not to be dependent on oil. And tourism is the main thing that they're focusing on these days.
Right. And of course, Iran has been suffering some, beyond just the sanctions, because the falling price of oil in the world as well. How is Iran coping with that?
Well, absolutely. Iran's revenues fell over 30% last year from oil, and this is its main export, and it's the largest exporter of oil in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge hit for the Iranian economy. But, and they're actually made a few projections recently to what they're expecting to make from oil in the next 5 years. But we have to remember these projections are not very accurate. Right now, they're basing them on around $140 a barrel, but it's likely that by that time, oil will reach $80 a barrel. So as far as oil goes, it doesn't look too optimistic for Iran right now. I think that's why they're hitting hard with tourism.
Are there other sectors that they're focusing on, the way that they're focusing on the tourism sector? I mean, obviously they have the nuclear energy going as well. Is there anything else that Iran has going for itself? I mean, we see a lot of development politically.
Right.
What could we expect from Iran?
Well, they're actually working on real estate right now pretty heavily, but still, it's in very baby stages right now. It's still beginning to just develop at this point. But tourism for years has been its main sphere of attracting worldwide economy. So I think it's very likely that they will keep pushing with tourism more than anything else.
Are there clear indications that there could be a stream in from Europe, considering that there is this stronger developing relationship between Iran and the European Union? I mean, we see a lot of course, European tourists going all over the European continent. Now, Iran is much further away, but I mean, once that train does link Budapest to Iran, to Tehran, I mean, would there be a big stream of tourists going into Iran then?
Well, we have to remember that Iran has very complex and sturdy relationships with Russia.
Okay.
So there's also that factor playing in, and Russia is likely to help it boost that attraction to European tourists. So it looks pretty good for Iran right now with this line, and it will be worldwide news once this line is operational. It's likely that there will be many people interested in traveling. Iran will have to boost security forces, though, to make people feel safer about coming in.
Of course, they're ideally situated between Russia and the West on either side. I mean, not actually involved in the conflict, of course, between Russia and the West, but essentially enjoying the relationship on either side, also in terms of tourists flowing in, which is certainly to its benefit.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Ayman Siksak, thank you very much for joining us on the Financial Bazaar. Look forward to seeing you again.
Sure.
Thank you. And while Iran's fossil fuel-based markets sag, a new initiative in Tunisia takes advantage of the North African country's surplus of solar energy. The project offers Tunisians much-needed job opportunities while also allowing European countries to decarbonize their grid. More on this report by Anthony Lesmy and Daniel Roth.
Reducing energy dependence on fossil fuels by turning to solar energy. It's the goal of a new project called Tunur, a factory that will begin construction in 2016 in the Tunisian Sahara, which should provide electricity to millions of European homes by 2018.
We believe that this is really opening a new energy corridor. This could be the first of many projects, and we could gradually decarbonize the European grid using desert power and using this solar energy with storage from the Sahara Desert and linked to Europe with high voltage DC cables, which are very, very low in their losses.
The electricity will be transmitted from the Tunisian coast to a point of interconnection in Italy via an underwater cable. The energy can then be dispatched throughout Europe. About $12.5 million in investment has already been put in by Low Carbon, a renewable energy company, and the solar developer Noor Energy, as well as Tunisian investors.
The technology that you can deploy in the desert is baseload renewable power. That means you can actually replace fossil fuel power plants because we can generate 24/7 using solar power.
A wide range of mirrors on 10,000 hectares will follow and reflect sunlight onto a boiler atop a central tower. Water or molten salt inside the boiler will be heated to about 550 degrees Celsius through the pump to a steam turbine to produce electricity. The Tunur project should contribute to Tunisia's stability by providing a boost to local business and by fighting against one of the root causes of the successful Tunisian democratic revolution, the lack of jobs.
A lot of this equipment can be manufactured by local Tunisian companies, and that will create employment and employment opportunities for the Tunisian youth. And that's one of the problems that the country has had. It's one of the causes of the revolution, is that there isn't enough growth and enough jobs being created, and we hope to be able to contribute to that through our project.
Making the sun a source of wealth may soon be the case in Morocco as well, where the first concentrated solar power plant will be set up in 2015 for just under $9 billion. It aims to produce 2 gigawatts of electricity, the same amount as the Tunisian project. It's enough to power 2 million homes, according to the Reuters report, and could reduce the energy dependence of Europe on Gulf countries and Russia.
And that's it for us at The Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at I24 News. Stick with us tomorrow as well. We have reports regarding the global climate change issue and how it affects the economy, and of course, ongoing tension between the UK and the EU and how that might unfold. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Follow me on Twitter at Tjong-Alvares and send us your comments via the feedback link at the bottom of our page to have a say on what we focus on our show. See you again tomorrow.